Alrighty, boys and girls, we're going to get started here in a couple of moments. We have some big announcements today, so go ahead and poke your buddies to join in, please. All right, so it has been 2 months, more than 2 months now, since January 3rd when we caught the pigeon. After 2 M2 fights, where we blew up most of the bad guys' Titan fleet that we could get our hands on, we have had a very interesting period of time. 2 months, very long period. I'm not too happy about the fact that they have chosen the most cowardly way out of this. We have been hanging on to this pigeon in M2, and we have been waiting for more opportunities to take out the enemy's Titan fleet. We got to nuke their dreadnoughts. We have had a bunch of other people take the iron ticket out of M2. They have suicided into us. They have essentially abandoned 130 of their Titans. With the moment that these guys got their leadership out of M2, that was that, and they have just left the rest of their group to hang. We have been holding out hope that there would be more bold attempts at breakouts or something more exciting that would give us an opportunity to get their Titans logged on and killed. It appears now, though, that they're going to put up jammers there with the iHub they have. They might even drop another Keepstar once they have the jammer up to make it easier for them to be able to get their Titans out. The point is that they are going to take the most cowardly way out of this, and it is time for us to move on. So that means what we're going to be doing after this Fireside is that we're going to be getting everybody together. We're going to be going to 1DQ1 and digging the fuck in and beginning the next phase of this war, which is preparing for the siege of 1DQ1. Essentially, what has happened is that we have been holding on to this pigeon this entire time, and now the pigeon has begun to stink. So we're going to drop the thing and go back to our castle. Boo, scary boo. Yes. So what's going to be happening here at the end of this Fireside as we go through this? We are going to be going to 1DQ1. We're going to be digging the fuck in on our terms, and we are just going to leave M2. There are only a couple ways out of M2. One is that they go the full coward strategy. They put the jammers up, they drop a Keepstar, and then functionally speaking, we will not be able to stop that. They will be able to extract with no risk. We will not get a Titan fight out of it. Or we pull out, we let them out, we dig into 1DQ1, and by doing so, we line up more opportunities for Titan fights. They're going to be trying to blow up our shit some more, and as they continue trying to blow up our shit, that lines up opportunities for us to kill them. So that's what we're going to do. Eventually, these things have to end. This has been the longest hell camp in the history of online gaming. The PR TAC hell camp lasted for 30 days. This one has gone way longer than that, and it is now time to move on. Now, essentially, what we have to do here, this is the moment of they have to fuck or walk, right? We're going to post up in 1DQ1. We are going to have, I believe, a lot more impact in our main fleet forces because instead of being stuck in M2 and 1DQ1 and having to maintain both, we'll be digging into 1DQ1, and that means all of our forces will be consolidated. I would prefer, of course, to keep them, hold on there forever, but they have had... they have choices. They have chosen the zero risk option. They have chosen the option that requires them to sit there for months and do nothing to get their guys out and abandon them. And it's time for us to just fucking go to 1DQ1, dig the hell in, and move on to the next phase. I would prefer to end this thing on our terms rather than having them get out because they got to do another coward strategy, and that's how they did it. So that is what we are doing. Now we're going to talk about the mechanics of that because Boulder is pointing out here, it feels like it's letting go of an ace up of our sleeve. One of the things that we have to do here is recognize that they have a ADM6 iHub, one that we have not been able to break because it is away from our Keepstar. It is not the kind of thing where we can get a hack through. And then when it's time for them to do the defense, they can hack those nodes in less than 6 minutes while we have to do a much longer hack. It is an unpleasant truth. It is something that I want you to examine the game mechanics yourself to understand why we're making this decision and why we are doubling down on 1DQ1. So that is that. That's what we're doing. How did M2 get to ADM6? It got to ADM6 because we had tons of people in it for a very long period of time. So after this Fireside, we're going to be forming up move ops, and we're going to be doing that. Now, what's going to be coming after that? That's going to be the big question. I need people to process the end of M2, accept that it's going to be ending on our terms rather than waiting for them to break out with every advantage that they can have. The whole reason why we're doing this is to try to kill their Titan fleets. If they are not going to put their Titan fleets at risk, then what we really need to be doing is getting ready for the next phase of the war, which will be after M2, and that means the defense of 1DQ1. As Kunmi points out here, one of the reasons why it has ADM6 is because they set it as their capital system, which gives a 2 ADM bonus. So get your shit ready. We are going to be moving out today. Now, after that, things get a little bit more interesting because we are going to have everyone together in one system, and we are no longer going to be having to split our forces. At the same time, we've also been introducing the Cultural Revolution. I have a lot of good news to report about that because we have had a huge uptake in people doing F2s. We have more Dictor alts, more Boucher alts, more applications to join Insurgent Squad. More people have joined the Black Hand than I've ever seen in one wave before. You guys, when we told you that we were done with you being F1 monkeys and that you can do better, instead of just going, oh, I don't want to do the work, we have heard from across the organization that many of you have been talking to each other, talking to your directors, and figuring your shit out in ways that you can do more than just turning up and pressing F1. Are Twitch streams of a hostile staging system a useful F2? Actually, potentially, yes. Scouting in general is a great thing. Now, here's the circumstances that we find ourselves in. I think that the enemy has been hoping that we are going to break and go to Saranen, or otherwise run for the hills in a post-M2 environment, instead of digging deep into 1DQ1. As part of that, and as part of our efforts to teach people to do more than just phoning it in and F1ing, we are going to be increasing the Headhunter bounty program. Up until this point, we had an iHub bounty system that was restricted to GSFOE. If you were in GSFOE, which is our hacking organization, we would pay you a bounty for every successful hack that you had. However, we have realized that this is a sort of a backward system. We are opening up the hacking bounty to everyone, and we are increasing that for any Delve iHubs that are hacked to 100 million ISK. So if you want to get out there and develop your F2, we know a lot of you are hacking like maniacs as it stands. Every single Delve iHub that is successfully hacked for the good guys, we will be paying you 100 million ISK. This is a new bounty program that we are introducing, and it's going to be bolted onto the existing Headhunter thread. We are also investigating more ways to increase these payouts because essentially what has happened is for the last month, while these guys have been abandoning 130 of their Titan pilots to just rot for 2 months after they got their leaders out, while that has been happening, Legacy and their allies have been telling each other that we are going to give up and that it is over and it's all going to be fine and goons are just going to passively sit in M2, in 1DQ1, and they're going to colonize our space, and they're going to live here on top of us, and everything is going to be fine. Instead, what we are doing is we are pulling out of M2, we are consolidating in 1DQ1, we are digging even further in to prepare for a siege of 1DQ1, and we are going to be focusing on getting out there and making it hell for these guys who are trying to live on top of us. So, there is one question that I have been repeatedly asked about 1DQ1 and the defense of 1DQ1, which is, can the servers handle it? That is a question that we do not know the answer to. We cannot rely upon the idea that CCP is magically going to be, well, we can usually rely on CCP not being too good when it comes to servers or anything like that. I do not want us to depend upon the idea that 1DQ1 is magically going to defend itself just because of our vast Goonie bulk, right? We have to do work. We have to make sure that we are actually dotting our I's, crossing our T's, developing our F2s, and digging in to do this. We cannot assume that the enemy is just going to give up on 1DQ1. We cannot assume that the servers will break in a way that favors us just because we live there. We have to do the work. We have to find out whether Pappy is willing to fuck or walk by leaving M2, dropping the stinky pigeon that we took several bites out of in the process, going to 1DQ1, building our fortress defenses even further. This then puts the question to Pappy. They have to decide whether they want to come at us or whether they want to do something else. If they want to randomly blow up abandoned citadels, that's fine, but we are going to force the question. We're in 1DQ1, we're digging in. We are not going to assume that the servers are going to go bad, right? We're going to prepare as if the servers are going to work perfectly and go from there. That is how we are going to prepare for the siege of 1DQ1 if and when it takes place. And I want you all to assume that a siege of 1DQ1 will happen, because a siege of 1DQ1 is what we must prepare for. Even if it does not happen, even if the bad guys blame CCP about this or that, we must prepare for a siege of 1DQ1. That is why you must develop your F2s. That is why we must do the move up that we are about to be doing right after the Fireside. That is why we have a lot more work to do. During the last 2 months, we have seen people like Dictator Imperator stepped up and has done so much. If there's anybody that I could just cover in fucking gold stars, the amount of work that Dictator Imperator has done to hold that fucking pigeon and to show the hundreds of pilots on Pappy that were waiting for their leaders to bail them out and rescue them, we proved that they essentially were abandoned, and everything that has been wrong with the Pappy leadership and the way that they treat their line members was demonstrated to the entire fucking galaxy because of the work that we have put into this. There have been a number of ships that we have murdered. We took out their entire fucking dreadnought fleet. We did 2 trillion ISK of additional damage to them in the one breakout that they did. We have seen off hundreds, actually, I was about to say that was going to be hyperbole, but it might have actually been more than, because it was occasionally like 2 a day. At the very least, more than 75 attempts at breaking out. Possibly more. I'm not sure whether we're going to go back and count, but it's been a fucking lot of them thrashing and trying to get out of this thing. And then finally, they have just opted for the coward's way out. So we are going to take our ball and go home to 1DQ1. So now this is an interesting question that Zed's Dead asks. And I'm going to answer it because I want to clarify that this is not what we're doing. His question is, does turtling up in 1DQ1 mean recalling forces that are out burning hostile regions? And we're going to talk about that next. We are not going to be turtling up in 1DQ1. This is us dropping a stinky pigeon that we have thoroughly manhandled and taken several bites out of. It is time to move on. And that does mean going to 1DQ1 and preparing for a siege. But that also means joining irregular forces, going on your corp ops, going on all of the ops that you have been seeing, and now we will not have to both hold M2 and do main fleet ops at the same time. We can focus on main fleet ops, we can focus on irregular ops, we can do what we've just done by increasing the bounty on hacking Delve, and generally set things on fire without worrying about having to stop a breakout through that process. We are not going to be recalling any of our forces. The process of holding in Delve thus far has been one of we sit here, we take blows, we've been holding onto the pigeon, now we're holding on to 1DQ1, and then while we have been doing that, our allies have been running around Legacy's backfield setting everything on fire. If we were not having our allies running around Legacy's backfield setting things on fire, this would be a very different war and would be a much darker war. The fact that we are able to hold here while Legacy is telling everybody that they are moving into Delve and they're moving into Aquarius, that goons are going to go to Saranin at any moment now. They can only convince their line members for so long that they are moving into Delve successfully while their regions burn behind them. There was a Dr. Mimbles post I saw a couple days ago where he went through and was pointing out that Legacy is in the process of losing 5 regions. Those slopes are slopes that you cannot deny. Those are the facts. So while we are holding in Delve, just as we asked our allies to suffer what we are suffering now, Initiative, Bastion, our friends in Fountain went through this process. We are here now holding in Delve, while the rest of the Imperium that is on offense is putting the sword to Villy and all of the Legacy guys. The Legacy guys, their situation is they are pot committed to this Delve thing. They have no choice anymore but to essentially suicide into us, because they have told their members that they are not going to be actively defending their backfields because we are giving up and we are going away and blah, blah, blah. Of course, we're not giving up and going away, but they have to essentially hope that we will, while they are waiting to see whether their shit in Esoteria can be evacuated. The impasse situation is pretty dire. The catch situation is pretty dire. There's a bit of intel that actually I don't want to talk about that yet. Anyway, hold on a moment. Let me take a sip of water here. The intel I have in particular is just going to be further confirmation of what we already know in terms of the legacy entities that are sloping. It's just further evidence that one of them is about to take a header, but I don't think it's come out in public yet. It's one of the smaller ones. It's not one of the bigger ones. Don't worry about that. So in the middle of this process, because obviously we are doomed and it is all over and blah, 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 goons are going to give up and go to Saarinen at any moment. We have two new corporations joining Goonstorm Federation. We have Russian Thunder Squad, which I am very delighted to have joining us. This sort of continues our investment in our Russian time zone, in our Russian members, and in our Russian allies. That is super cool, old school AAA corporation joining us. Very happy about that. We also have Anzac Alliance, who is joining us. They were previously in Siberian squads, and they are going to be reinforcing our Australian time zone. So in the middle of this process, while you are taking a look at all the legacy alliances that are losing corporations, losing members, and starting to see those early stage, actually not even early stage, at this point we're in middle stage, and final stage cascades for the ones that are really eating shit like Rosada, Worked Intentions, etc. We are getting people to join us. It's pretty cool. So yeah, that is our overall situation there. Let me take a look at these notes. All right, so when we were destroying Band of Brothers, this was back in 2009, we had the PR TAC Hell Camp, and it lasted for 30 days. And it finally ended when the bad guys reached out to some of their allies. In this case, our enemies don't really have allies because our enemies are the rest of the fucking game. But that hell camp ended because they broke out. In this case, we are just going to go ahead and take our foot off of their throat and go to fucking 1DQ1, and Monty Python style, we're going to post up on the fucking walls of our castle and call them names and call them cowards and point out that they suck shit and they should bring it, and that we would be delighted to fight them there. Let me go ahead and take some questions about this because I want to make sure that people understand why we're doing what we're doing so that people don't get the wibbles. Is there a plan in case 1DQ1 falls? Yeah. We have plans within plans within plans. One of the things about this war that has been kind of interesting since the get-go is that it has been a very slow process, but it has not been necessarily an unpredictable process. We have sort of essentially put a pause on the war by holding them in M2 because they had a series of unforced errors that we then exploited by holding them there that has sort of muddied that timeline. But in general, what we've seen through this whole process is 3 blocks enter, 2 blocks leave. When 3 blocks go to war, one of them is going to die, and it ain't going to be us, and it ain't going to be PanFam. And so what we are seeing here is that PanFam is sticking around, partially because we have a bunch of their Titans trapped, but also because as Legacy is colonizing or attempting to colonize our territory and our space, this sets up the death of a block, and it's not going to be us. But essentially, Legacy is having their shit burned behind them as they are colonizing or attempting to colonize our space. Legacy is hoping that you all break and that you give up and run, and that's that. And we are betting on the idea that we can murder them and thus win and survive. And that at the end of this, there will be PanFam, there will be us, and there's whatever's left over the bits and scraps that fed themselves into the wood chipper. Questions about where you should have your stuff. We've been saying since the beginning of this that the safest place in Delve is in 1DQ1. That has not changed. Yeah, Rosada is basically toast. I think that we're going to see that alliance implode or fuck off very soon. That is a link that Gloxier posted here. Rosada is definitely no further comments on that yet. Am I concerned that if we hole up in 1DQ1, the enemy will just attack everything other than 1DQ1 at the same glacial pace? Not particularly, no. Are we restaging capitals to the Imperial Palace? I am not going to be answering a question about where we are going to be putting our capitals. We are going to be having move ops right after the Fireside, and for the capital fleets, you will be told where you are going on those ops. It's a good question, and I invite you to ask your FC in a moment when we get that going. Can we blow up our own structures to speed Pappy along towards 1DQ1? I would prefer not to. I think it is kind of hilarious that, well, there's a rumor that somebody took a lot of time off work in order to just grind abandoned structures. And I think it's hilarious that somebody might hypothetically have spent their vacation time on doing such a thing. So yeah. I'm not going to name any names there, though. Questions about a last stand. This is not like a last stand plan. Like, I fully intend for us to save 1DQ1. I want them to dash themselves against the walls of it. This is not a last stand. This is something we've been planning. If we hadn't caught the pigeon, if we had not beaten the shit out of them so hard in the M2 fights, then the logical next step would have been what we're doing right now, right? Like, this is sort of the path of a war of this sort, given the balance of forces. We are allegedly, if we were like the puppies, supposed to give up and run away, which we are not doing. I think that they will pay a terrible price to even try to take 1DQ1, and I think that we want them to try, and we want to make them bleed for it. That's the plan. Yeah, I mean, this is essentially, you know, the biggest siege in the history of online gaming. This entire process has been that. It will continue to be that until our enemies break or until we break, and we will not break. Dictator says that he doesn't think that they're going to attack 1DQ1. One of the things that, and it's possible, right? But one of the reasons why we have to prepare for this is that several months ago, you may not remember this, but it leaked out that Gobbins had announced that their victory condition was not necessarily blowing up the 1DQ1 palace, but they were going to be going after the faction Fortizars in 1DQ1 and whatever. But that was like the PanFam war goal, was torching our capital system. We are going to try to stop them. Maybe they're going to walk away from that. Maybe they're going to say, oh, M2 has proven that the servers can't handle it or whatever. But I do not want us to be in a situation where we are not doing our level best to do the needful to defend this shit. And so we're going to take it seriously and do the work. I would give it, you know, it's a weird mix of odds. I would give it between 30%. Actually, I don't want to actually give people my estimations on it because I don't want the enemy to hear my thinking. I do want to tell you my odds breakdowns of what I think is going to happen, but I don't want to hand that on a platter to the bad guys. Sorry, dudes. All right. We're still going to do Afghanistan irregular stuff. Okay, so let me make this very clear. Sindragon is asking Sindraken Gorian says, we're still doing Afghanistan and irregular stuff, right? The only thing that is changing here tonight is that we are about to leave M2. We are going to drop the pigeon, move our forces back to 1DQ1, and then we are going to proceed further with the war. We are not turtling in 1DQ1. We are not stopping all ops out of sight of 1DQ1. We are going to be doing more of what we have been doing because, again, don't forget, you guys are developing your F2. We did a very big shift last week. If you are new and you think that this is going to go away, when we do a cultural revolution, it's serious. The standard of behavior that we are now setting for our line members is that nobody gets to be an F1 monkey. Everybody tries to develop their skills. Everybody tries to do more because our fleet commanders and everybody who's in subdirector and support positions is already doing so much more that it is no longer fair for our command layer. I can no longer look our directors and our fleet commanders in the eye, hypothetically, because it's an internet game, and I'm not really looking them in the eye, but you know what I mean. I feel bad as the leader getting up here and saying, hey guys, I want our fleet commanders out there doing X, Y, and Z and hitting F7, F8, F22, if there was such a thing, without asking our line to do one thing more. And when we're doing the Cultural Revolution stuff, a lot of you guys are already, especially if you're turning up on a Fireside, you're the most invested population. You're people that are, in many cases, hitting F3, F4, or more. But the F1 monkey shit has got to end. And it will end, and we're going to be doing our level best to make it as easy as possible for you to try to meet our fleet commanders and crew halfway. That's what we're doing. All right. Our best case scenario, what I am hoping for is this. The pigeon stinks, we drop the pigeon, we go to 1 to Q1, we dig in. More main fleet activity, more people developing their F2s. The whole course of this war, we have been looking for chances to do Titan fights because we believe that we can beat them. And so far throughout history, we have repeatedly beaten our enemies in those situations. We degrade their strategic forces because while they outnumber us in subs, we have at least parity or superiority in terms of supers as long as we can choose the ground and the opportunity is correct. So my hope here is we go to 1 to Q1, we get out of M2, we get our shit correct, we increase the bounties on all of the hacking, we shove people more into irregulars, more people develop their F2 to do more, to put pressure on the enemy, and then when there are mistakes that the enemy makes, we will capitalize on them and try to kill more of their Titans. So essentially, what I am saying is I want everybody to be developing your F2s in order to make it easier for us to get another M2. That's the goal. That is still the goal. That has been the goal since the very beginning of this war, is to set up opportunities to punish the enemy's strategic capacity by leveraging the fact that we know how to win Titan fights. The bad guys seem to be bad at it, and we want to just destroy everything we can. Okay, now we have a lot of work to do, and we're going to go do that work. So there's going to be move ops starting now, and we are going to, let me answer this one question. Okay. Right. Never mind. I'm not going to answer that question. I'm going to have a sip of water. We've got a lot of work to do. We're going to fucking do it. Let's get back to 1 to Q1. We're going to move everything out of M2. We are going to dig the fuck in and get the fuck to work. We're going to be raising our bounties and moving on to the next phase of this war. Never let the enemy forget their cowardice, that they have chosen the easiest possible way out. They claim that they want to fight. They claim that they are something that should be respected in any way possible. And yet they abandoned their line members and their allies for months through this process. Never let them forget it. Shove it in their fucking faces. Now it's time for us to let go of the stinky pigeon. We're going to go to 1 to Q1 and dig the fuck in. Ops are going out shortly. Thank you for coming. We'll see you here next week.